to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, SCS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that not only promises, but delivers in bringing you the very best guests in all of true crime. And two of my absolute favorites on today, although only one shows up on time. That would be Special Agent Scott Duffy, formerly of the Wilmington office of the Bureau. He also was a police officer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and now he's the director of the Criminal Justice Institute, as you see there, at Wilmington University. And he's in high demand with a lot of crazy stories going on. It's been a week that feels like it's been 6 months. And so there we go. But it is Friday. We have made it. Scott Duffy, has it felt like a long couple of months this week?
Yeah, it has, hasn't it? Just seems like the days are long. We're starting to change to, I think our regular temperatures of 30s, 40s. So it's winter's upon us.
Yeah, look at this. IGG, listening while cleaning. The COE, it's funny you bring that up, IGG. She prefers not to clean because she just figures, hey, it'll get dirty again. So now I'm going to get the hate mail. Why can't you clean? This isn't the 1950s. I clean. I keep things neat and organized. But then the one-woman wrecking machine comes in. Let me go to the bottom here because I'm already going to be getting yelled at. Scott, please. So Scott now has a new thing. He has a new background every week. What is this, Scott Duffy? I love it. It's a story every week.
Yeah, this is not live, but this is Dubai. This is outside. I believe it's their training center. I don't think it's also their headquarters, but at beautiful UAE. I'll move so you can see my young mug as I drove that beautiful Jeep. Yeah. I had it for a day.
That's the color of my green Bronco, by the way. So that's what I thought it was. I hope my Bronco wasn't in Dubai before it was in Miami. New Hampshire's in the house. The only person not in the house is Phil Waters. Curious to hear what this week will be. We don't know. All I know is I can depend on SGS for the current events. Yeah. Just so everybody knows, typically, as you know, on Fridays, we always go long, which Phil and Scott are probably annoyed with, but I love talking to them. But today, I have a hard out, as they say, at 2:00. So we'll start wrapping up at about one. We're going to go like an hour, and we're going to dive in shortly to the Alexander brothers. I just switched the thumbnail. If you guys remember the kids' book, which came out way after I was a kid, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. That is the title of the thumbnail, except instead of Alexander, it's Alexanders with a possessive apostrophe. Horrible, terrible, no good, very bad day. And there, look at this. This is like a new. Were you upstairs in the mahogany wood attic?
I'm in the bunker here in Texas. Yeah, today.
If someone was to break into that bunker because it looks secure, do you have a means of dealing with them if a foreign subject entered those doors?
That would be a big mistake for that person to make that effort,
especially in Texas. By the way, Phil, you're joining us slightly late. I was telling them I have a super hard out at 2:00 today, even though I always drag you guys way longer. So we're going to do a little short, sweet version of this show today. There's only so much true crime. I was telling you yesterday that a man can take in a week. So there's this crazy story out of Miami. I'm going to get to it in just 1 second. And the COE's circle of friends, everyone's like talking about it. And the world is sort of talking about it. It's been covered by major media outlets. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, Phil Waters behind Scott Duffy is a green Jeep. And he just told the story. It's not any green Jeep. Scott Duffy, tell Phil what that is.
That is one of the Jeeps, the police Jeeps that belong to the UAE police outside their training center. So I was there for 6 weeks training with them. It was fun.
To the
What
UAP.
what brand is it? Was that a?
Couldn't tell you.
Hmm.
You tell me. You're the car guy.
Oh, I don't know. That's some sort of foreign made Jeep looking thing. I don't know what that is. I mean, there's a lot of manufacturers in Europe, and I think Russia builds. I know Russia builds cars. China, of course, builds cars. So yeah, no telling where that came from.
Before we get into the Alexander brothers and their despicable human beings by all accounts, and I only have so much patience for horrible people today, so we'll. And then I've got the news of the week, but I gotta ask, Scott Duffy. We've got Rob D'Amico. I didn't even know this, but the FBI has a counter drone team that he was on for a while. What the hell is going on over New Jersey? By the way, and I never get political on this show, and one is a Republican, one's a Democrat, but I think it's time for term limits. If you guys didn't see yesterday, COE and my mom are yelling that I'm even mentioning this, but I just can't get over this. Mitch McConnell comes to the Capitol with something that looks like out of the show MASH, with a bandage around his head, and he's asked questions, and he just stares into the camera. Why they are doing this to this guy, who is obviously at his very end, is beyond me. And then today we get word that Nancy Pelosi goes flying in Europe while doing whatever she's doing over there. She's in the hospital. So I think it's time at some point, Democrat, Republicans, I'm not picking a side here. I'm just saying, like, maybe the people shouldn't be 137 all running the country. But I digress. But I brought that up because people in Congress have responded to this. Scott Duffy, what the hell is over New Jersey? Some people say they're like bus-size drones. D'Amico said, "Oh, they're just planes." I'm like, how can these just be planes? What is happening in your opinion? And then we'll get to the Alexander brothers.
I don't know. I look up in the sky every night hoping that I can see some nothing. So and then I think there are now similar type ones that have been spotted over different parts of Connecticut. So it seems to be from, lower New England to over New Jersey. Nothing to see here. Okay. Nothing to report. It's just lights in the sky. It's Christmas time, Hanukkah, festive season. It's just Christmas.
Well, listen, I honestly haven't been fond, but I think we're going to do a show because I'm getting intrigued about it. But Phil Waters, I think a member of Congress, first of all, what's his name from Connecticut? I'm blanking on his name now. Longtime senator. Blumenthal. That's it. I knew.
Yeah, the guy that was a Marine officer that claimed to have fought in Vietnam and told a lie. Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
He said we need to start shooting these things out of the sky. Another guy said
I would agree with him.
Yeah, and there's another guy that said, by the way, these are floating not far from soon-to-be President Trump's Jersey home in Bedminster. I mean, it's basically going over that. I'm getting yelled at. I knew I would for the politics. But someone in Congress said, look, hey, what's up, Emily D. Baker? Great to have you here. Love seeing you here. This is a Wacky Friday show. So Phil Waters, one congressperson suggested that these are coming from like an Iranian stealth
mothership. I think.
Mothership. So what the hell's going on here, Phil? Please.
Oh my gosh. Well, if it's one thing, it's just another, right? So I would tell you in regards to the drones, I was looking at the pictures that are shown, all over the media. And I'm going to tell you something. I've been seeing these. And I'm just talking about the pictures, the lights, the way they're configured. I've been seeing these things in Hawaii for the last 5 years. In fact, I've walked into I go out every night and I look up into the heavens because it's just so magnificent. And I started noticing these green, red, white lights, and they're the same kind of configuration. And some of them are close, some of them are a little further away, but they're all over the place. And I thought when I seen it, I brought her outside. And I said, "Look, you see that?" So, and I was asking their friends of mine that I thought might know, what is this? And I've been told that it might be Starlink, it might be, this and that, satellites of some kind. And then there were times where I would go out and I'd start counting them. And like one night I had like 15 of them. So I don't know that they are the same thing, but I think those things in New Jersey, and now they're coming into Connecticut, and they're seeing them all over the place. People don't trust the government anyway. And for the Department of, DOD and all these people coming out saying, I think Scott used the word, there's nothing to see here, move on. I think is just adding to the fire of distrust. They need to explain what these things are. And if it means taking one of them out of the sky, shooting it down or whatever, then go do it. We have these balloons that were coming over, flying over bases and all that stuff. And that allowed to go clear across the country before we did anything about it. So and this is just ridiculous. And let me say something about politicians and term limits. Any one of these politicians can be term limited at every election cycle. So, people need to quit. It used to be that it was hard to get an incumbent out, somebody that's been there too long. And the only way you could do it is if they were caught with a dead girl or a live boy. So, but that seems to be out the window too. So all I'm saying is people need to quit being lazy about their vote and figure out who these people are that they keep voting into office. And I'm all for getting some of these dinosaurs out of there. And why they keep, I'm with you. Why they keep propping up Mitch McConnell like, here you go.
Yeah,
whoever's got their hand in his back, moving his mouth every once in a while. That's insane.
Yeah, it's like weekend at Bernie's. It's past the point of like what's like
it's ridiculous.
Acceptable, I think. Yeah, and it's not political. I don't care what side they are.
It's not. I tell you what it is. What it is, and it doesn't matter who it is, whatever side of the spectrum they're on. When they get to that point, in my view, it becomes disrespectful. It becomes disrespectful to them as individuals. It becomes disrespectful to the office that they hold. So, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're a true crime show. But of course, in typical Joel fashion, our most viewed video ever is a video I did with Ross Coulthard, who broke open the UFO whistleblower story. And so maybe Sunday night I jump into drones because I'm fascinated by it. And so we'll pick it up. But now we got to switch over to these guys. These are the Alexander brothers. I saw someone saying, get to the story. So these are this is Tal and either Oren or Alone. Oren and Alone are twins. So for those of you who do not know, we're going to go through this. COE, this is their very modest home in Miami. One of their modest homes. You see off to the right is the full shot of the house. So these guys are they're four brothers. One is estranged, interestingly enough. Three of them are notorious in the Miami area and have been for years. And now we're learning more and more for treating women like objects. So you see Scott's agency right there. Worse than objects, but you see Scott's agency walking into this home. The father owns a company called Kent Security. And the brother who's on the right there, in that little photo up there, he's the president of Kent Security because he worked so hard. And I kid. Daddy put him in as president of the company. The other two, credit to them, they built sort of a real estate empire with help from the dad. And they were, like real estate rock stars. The twins are 37 and Tal, the other, is 38. People are asking about the names. They're Israeli, so kind of unusual names. So we're going to get into they were arrested Wednesday, all three separately, all in Miami. and one is in federal custody and two are in state custody. And if you can believe it, the father put up his home in Bal Harbor, which is one of the fancier neighborhoods in the Miami Beach area, if not the fanciest. And he put up his home as collateral, and they were granted bail. They were granted bail, Scott Duffy, by a Miami-Dade circuit judge this morning. However, not so fast. They're not getting released because Scott's old agency, the feds, the FBI, and the federal government are involved. So, and again, the third brother is in a federal holding facility. We're going to get through all of this, and there's also another person, not the estranged brother, but the cousin, who is on the run. And I've got an interesting story twist that involves Karm that that's what we call a tease in this business. I'll tell you about in a few minutes. But Scott Duffy, 3 brothers arrested all on one day, all in separate locations. The twins are together in a state prison. The older, tall, is in a federal holding cell. They're granted bail this morning, but they're not allowed to leave. What the hell is going on? Why are 2 in state, 1 in federal?
I'm going to guess that these, both the state and the federal investigations were somewhat done in concert, that they weren't, they were done parallel. So it's possible that the feds and the state are talking to each other, and perhaps the feds have a little less with regards to getting the arrest in a timely manner. They wanted to do all 3 and others at the same time, so they went with what they have federally wise on who they've arrested, and then the other let the state be able to put the charges on them, so kind of everything could be done simultaneously, and then ultimately wrap them all in one big federal case. So yeah, nobody's getting out, right? It's even though the state, following their state protocols, grants high bail, and then of course the feds, they're going to wrap them up and say, hey, we don't have bail system, so and you're not going to be let out based upon a couple of different factors that the prosecution will have to prove, and seems pretty easy to prove here.
And I know the COE is working to get up because we have pictures from today of the twins, and we're hearing from friends that the twins used to trick women all along from high school on up, saying one was the other while the other was the one, if you get what I'm saying. So to Phil Waters, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'm not going to spend a crazy amount of time on this because I want to just have a somewhat healthy Friday. And these guys are literally in competition. If this was the Olympics with Diddy here, they would be tied for the gold medal. Diddy might be a touch wackier, I don't know, but very much along the same line. So eventually you'll see Orrin is in a red jumpsuit today. They're both in court. They are, as I said, which is it boggles the mind of some. They are granted a $3 million bond and a $2 million bond, respectively. The father puts up his Bal Harbor home as collateral, but they're not going anywhere again because they are being held on other federal charges, even though they're in state prison. The cousin is a guy named Ohad Fisherman. Again, I'm going to give you the Karm nexus to that in a little bit. They're both seen in their little turtle suits, aka unaliving vests. They have stay away orders, and you know what? I realize what's happening here. I don't think my new notes refresh. So let me go to my phone here in real time and tell you guys. So that's what happened. I don't think so. Basically, Phil Waters, while I am struggling to pull this up, the prosecutor here, Fernandez Rundle, who's been here for like 30 years, she basically said, look, these guys are a danger to the public, even though bond was granted. But they've retrieved WhatsApp messages, and I'm going to start to read an exchange here. This is between the brothers, and one of their friends, and Oren, who's in, that's right there in the orange. I'm sorry. He says, you got to start to think, these are from WhatsApp messages. You got to start to think about your reputation that you want out there. Oren says to his older brother, Tal, in one of the conversations transcribed by federal investigators. And he says, understood. Did someone complain? Well, a lot of people complained. A lot of women have come forward. There were 4 civil suits filed this summer by women. And since then, 40 more women have come forward. Very reminiscent of Diddy. Phil Waters, it was a very wordy way to get to, you're a homicide detective, but I'm sure you've worked sex crimes. What do you do now? These guys are under arrest. Obviously, the feds have a lot on them. You got 40 women coming forward. How do you go? There's 2 women named, I believe, in the Miami charges. How do you now go about putting this all together? Because this is difficult in a lot of ways to prove in a court of law.
Well, true. And what I have read about these, POSs, this kind of behavior was going on back in high school.
Yeah.
So this just seems to be something that they have continued on with as they've grown into to full-grown adults. And for that period of time, so we're talking 20 years, I think that they've gone back, and I think I read where the things that are being documented now went back 10 years. They have a multiple victims in this thing. And the federal aspect of it, at least what I read, I believe, is involving the human trafficking aspect. They're getting into some sex trafficking stuff. And I think that's where the feds kind of stepped in and filed some federal charges along those lines. I am astounded that these individuals are being given a bond and the opportunity of bailing out. Their flight risks, the fact that they're Israelis, that does present a problem. We had a case involving an Israeli that murdered a woman, knifed her to death, and then fled to Israel. And it took a lot of time to get him back. So there's something about that going to Israel, if you're Israeli, that it really throws up a lot of barriers. So I'm surprised just that factor alone. And if only half of what these guys are accused of doing is true, it is despicable. It is, and I'll use the word here, in this particular context, it's evil what these guys were doing to these women. And
100%.
So I don't, and I'm a little. So you brought up Flip Diddy or Pip Diddy or whatever his name is, and they will not give him. They will not set a bail amount for him, a bond for him, which I think is interesting. And he's done very much similar.
Very similar.
And of course, now we're getting people. Now we're getting men that are coming out and saying that he was doing it to them. But be that as it may, you still have, in the context of the allegations, these guys are at least as bad as Pip Flippy. So I'm a little surprised at giving these guys a way to flee. I mean, that's the way I look at this. They're eligible for no bonds. So I find that a little odd. So we don't know what's going on in the backstory behind the scenes there with the judge and all that stuff. But I don't know. Maybe they sold the judge one of his houses. Who knows?
You don't know. Here, by the way, judges know a lot of people. Mindy Glazer is like kind of the fame. She does all the first appearances, and she knows everybody that she is speaking to, including Donna Adelson. She handled that. These are first appearances. Vesper Martini is here in Miami. She's all over this. The cousin, his name is Ohad Fisherman. He is set to surrender to Miami-Dade authorities. When, we don't know. Here's the kicker with Karm. You want the Karm connection? The brothers are filthy rich. The cousin is not. The cousin rents a place where Karm lives. Karm's watching the news last night. Karm calls me. That's how small Miami is. She's like, Joel, I know that person. Who is this other person? I said, that's the cousin. That's Ohad. She's like, Joel, I talk to him all the time. I said, Mom, be so thankful you're 85 and not 35, because it might be a whole different story we're having. So she couldn't believe it. She got a little too close to home. I had a few moments of panic. Look at, here he is. He's a doll. Love this guy. I wish I knew your real name. Happy holidays, Joel. To you and your lucky wife and family. The difference between those 4 losers and me, look at this, second generation extreme wealth. Look at this. I love this. Is that my dad made me sweat. I would wager theirs did not. Yes, I bet you're right. But kudos, man. I hope you're living La Vida Loca, whatever it is. A good life is what I'm trying to say. Loca is crazy. Anyway, Ned Smith here. Got to hear from the attorney in Houston. Busby is going to have a busy few years. You could say that again. So I'm going to read some stuff, and it is disturbing. So there's a trigger warning. Everyone put their earmuffs on. These are from messages that the federal indictment has now, it's been unsealed. And these are messages between the brothers. Not all messages. Some are comments, just to give you an idea who these people are. Oren, and again, I get them all. I think Oren is in the red, but it's tough to tell the twins apart. So Oren is in the red. He bragged it's called Crop, K-R-O-P is the name of the school here in Miami Beach. He bragged in the Crop yearbook that, quote unquote, riding my first choo-choo train, a sexual reference, was his most memorable moment from high school. The Alexander brothers, with other men, and also this cousin, friend of Karm's, they, according to the federal indictment, Scott Duffy, planned, quote unquote, imports of women at one point to a vacation rental in the resort town of Tulum, Mexico. In October 2016, they discussed splitting costs and which drugs, including the drug G, identified as the date rape GHB, to give the women in a Lions, I don't know what that means, in Tulum. The WhatsApp captures some of the conversation. So the COE was going to make graphics, but I let her slide today. So I'm going to read this to you. Male 1 says, some of the language here is not language that might be language Karm uses, but never me. So male 1 says, gonna start collecting for the pot to fly bitches down. Alone says, there should be a fee per bang and after bang. Male 1 says, starting to collect Venmo for girls' flights. Orange says, oh yeah, what's the lineup? Need to pick winners. Male 1 says, LOL, it's going to be hard to get girls up to your standard. Orange says, just warn them your boys are hungry. Tall says, after I presume looking at photos, girls look fresh. That's one exchange right there. Scott Duffy, the thing that I'm curious about here, besides how they kind of deteriorated to this level of vile depravity, besides that, there's a male 1 here. We don't know who that is. Do the feds know who male 1 is, or are they going to find out who male 1 is?
Yeah, they know who male 1 is. You would identify them through an affidavit, through male 1, CW1, CI1, and then those names will be released later and so forth. I would imagine that they already have names attached, the idea of who was sending the text, from what phone, etc.
Phil, this is a great question, and I sort of I don't know, my sick sadistic self hopes the answer is yes. Phil, will inmates treat these two the same way they've treated women? There's no way these guys are going down. I mean, the evidence is going to be overwhelming. They have a right to a trial, obviously, and fair legal representation. They have a lawyer here in Miami. I was told it was a woman, but it's actually a male attorney. There are more of these WhatsApp chats, but Phil Waters, you've known to put people away into prison. Are these guys going to be heroes in a prison for doing this to women, or are they going to be vilified and experience extreme pain in different sorts of ways?
Well, to answer that question, I would say that I'll make the comment that I used to make to some of the suspects that I spoke to when we were discussing what their future may hold. And I always asked them to consider the prospect of them going to prison, and there were three things going against them. They're young, they're pretty, and they're weak. So I would have to say that in this case, they qualify for that particular description. Now, there's a pecking order in prison. These guys are going to be at the bottom of it, and I hope they enjoy their new relationships with Jethro and Bubba. So it's going to be it'll be an interesting if that's where they end up. They're going to be shown what the real world in prison is about, and it will be related to what they have done to women throughout it sounds like, almost their entire lives. So they will be humiliated. They'll be desecrated in about every way possible. They'll be minimized, assaulted. They've got not a very promising future ahead of them if they're convicted and sent to prison.
By the way, I really, honestly, having two daughters, I don't know how much of this I could take today. So I'm going to go a few more minutes, and then I think I'm just going to have scroll to the bottom, and you guys can ask Phil and Scott whatever you want within reason. And then I've got some true crime stories of the week. And today is going to be a little bit shorter because I got to be somewhere right at 2:00 today. But again, very disturbing what I'm about to read out loud. But hold on to your hats. And then, Scott, at the end of this little exchange, I'm going to address Super Planner Girl's comment here. Mail one, I'm going to start collecting for the pot to fly bitches down. There should be, Alone says, there should be a fee per bang and after bang. Mail one, starting to collect Venmo for girls' flights. Oh, yeah. What's the lineup? Need to pick winners. This is the one I just read. I'm sorry. Here we go. Here's a new one. This starts with Alone, the brother. I think we should all bring chicks and not rely on a promoter since we have never met the girls. We need fun girls with good attitude. I'm sure we all met many recently this summer. They're talking about the trip to Tulum in Mexico. And then Mail 2 says, now there's a Mail 2 and a Mail 1. I know you know some winners, says Mail 2. Mail 1 says, I don't want anyone being upset if they don't run a 10-man train. Mail 1, I just need to handle drugs. Tall says, yes. Mail 1 says, I don't want ecstasy around too much. Mail 1, coke, shrooms, and G, which is a date rape drug. Mail 1, X makes the girls want to chase the effing party. He uses the word. Tall says, photographers, drugs. So it sounds like they're in the Diddy vein of taking pictures. Mail 1 assures it's all getting worked on. Scott Duffy, again, this behavior goes back to high school, apparently. There's not a person here that has anything good to say about them. It's the exact opposite, that they're, pardon my French, complete scumbags, always have been, and always were allowed to get away with things. Daddy would bail them out, although it looks like the end of the line is at their feet right now. But like the Diddy case, why were these two, and then the third who we're not looking at, and then the cousin, and then Mail 1 and Mail 2, how were these entitled POSs, as Phil said, how were they able to do this for so long? What is the psychology behind that? Like, how? Why?
Oh, you must want Dr. Burgess on. Is that?
Yeah, I do.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this. And Super Planner Girl, spot on. Those are the same questions that I have whenever something similar would come across my desk and be like, this is fugitives do well when they hide in plain sight. Um, and they mingle amongst and sometimes those are the best places to hide. And so here they're free with their texts, they're free with their WhatsApp conversations. Thank God for that, because law enforcement is grabbing that and saying no need to confess, we got it, and so forth. I would say first and foremost, even though human trafficking, human sex trafficking, etc., not only the sex trafficking, the labor trafficking and whatnot, really has spun up in the last, I would say more, but especially in the last decade. And they are tough cases to prosecute because first and foremost, you need your victims to be witnesses. And so we have um like the P. Diddy case where you have old footage of just this violent behavior towards women. And then it doesn't necessarily mean, well, that then means this. But with everything put together, um, is it possible that these victims, who are ultimately your witnesses, were not coming forth for a variety of reasons? It seems like extortion, fear, retribution, etc. And so, and then going overseas, that's a whole nother dynamic with out of country victims who may have been paid off to keep their mouth quiet or so forth. So I feel like it's a combination of um, the right person wasn't um, scratch that. I mean, the investigation, nobody seemed to have them in their crosshairs, and thereby looking to quietly and go get one witness and two witnesses, etc., and then start getting the trove of evidence digitally, getting all their footprints and whatnot. And of course, power and fame, that has a lot to do with pushing off investigations by making uh, evidence or witnesses um, stay away from law enforcement. I see it as a combination of things, um, but yet very very troubling, right? That
Yeah.
we're all supposed to be against human trafficking, human sex trafficking, and yet this is done at major arenas and stadiums and sports events, and it all seems to be done right under our noses. So so kudos to at least law enforcement pushing the right buttons and getting these men off the streets.
And Scott, just a quick response to this one, but since the feds have this indictment, does this mean they've got the goods on them? They wouldn't indict without it.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything else, an indictment ultimately, I think, is the best way to go. It allows law enforcement to quietly gather evidence, not only, for example, going and getting all these WhatsApp conversations and texts and doing all their background to connect the dots, but then bringing in. So what I like about these grand juries is you get to bring in these victim witnesses. I'll just call them victim witnesses. That's exactly what they are. They need to get their story out. They need to be corroborated, and then the grand jury is very friendly to them. It's not a jury of their that is going to decide the fate of the individual. They're sort of like these very friendly faces, and prosecution can bring in these witnesses, and it kind of gives them a sense that, hey, it's not that bad. um, and so it's like almost like a dress rehearsal for a trial, which is very intimidating to a victim witness. So what I like about it, they get to do it on their own time, bring everybody in one by one in a secret manner, and then allow the evidence to build, and then the grand jury can make a decision, yay or nay, and then allow the feds and the state, when the state uses a grand jury, to on their terms to go and grab these individuals.
Yeah, COE, I don't know if you can pull this up, but Phil Waters, to you, at the hearing yesterday where they were initially, it was their first appearance, they were denied bail. So yesterday, this guy in the red, I believe, I get him confused again. There's Alone, A-L-O-N, and Oren, O-R-E-N, but I think it was Oren in the red. He gets up and says, "Judge, I need to be out of here. My wife is due any day." These guys, I think, are married to supermodels. She's pregnant. She is due any day. I mean, that just takes it to a whole other level. This guy's a sick, you know what? I mean, he's destroyed his wife's life. He's destroyed his child's life. He's destroyed the lives of all these women. Your response to that?
Well, if the judge used that as a factor to set the bail, were it me, my response would have been, you should have thought about that before you started trafficking and assaulting these women in the most degrading way.
Phil, real quick, I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to address this comment real quick. I was in no way, I was not implying the victims. What I was saying are friends of theirs, male friends of theirs, people in the community, because apparently this was an open secret. I was not talking about the victims. I know how tough that is. I mean, if you're a victim of this, now thankfully kind of the floodgates have opened up. But I meant like people here in the community that I know who are men knew that this was going on. I mean, a lot of people knew it was happening. Why didn't this guy's parents knew what was going on? I'm sure other parents in the community knew what was going on. So I'm not talking about the victims. I was talking kind of bigger circle. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, and you use the term men, and I know it's semantics, but I wouldn't refer to any of these as men.
Yeah.
These are males.
Yes.
That have done atrocious things. And there's not one of them that I would look at and categorize them as a man. So this is just, this type of behavior is just unconscionable. It's just, there's no excuses for these guys, especially when you come from privilege anyway. This is, and that's probably what fueled a lot of this, the fact that they got away with it, continue to get away with it. And people that knew about it don't have the backbone or the cojones to step up and say, wait a minute, what these guys are doing is wrong. So, I've got 2 daughters. I've got granddaughters. I tell you what, if what they were doing to other women had happened to one of my children and grandchildren, they wouldn't have to worry about getting a bail set.
Them is Texas words right there. Them.
Well, I'm just saying that
I don't doubt you, Phil Waters. Yeah. Hey, listen, I feel the same way. If these guys did this, and I hope he's not having a daughter. We don't know. At least I don't know what the gender is of the baby, but that whole world is already turned upside down. The kid has not been born yet. I am going to go home. I know it, to both Carm and the COE, screaming, yelling, why do you do this show? I think these shows are important to do. It's Friday. COE, don't come at me. I have had a very long week. I just think these stories are important. They're difficult to talk about, but if you don't talk about them, then nobody knows what is happening. And so that's it. Selfishly. Oh, thank you, Shanta. I thought you were talking to me, which is fine because a lot of people may have thought, and I'm glad that we clarified that. Scott Duffy, just a couple more minutes on this because I really can't take it today. Why is one of these dudes apparently alone in a turtle suit, Scott, aka the unaliving suit? The other guy appears to just be in a red jumpsuit. Would you have the inside track on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a hard answer. Like the questions I would have, are they coming from the same facility, or are they coming from 2 different facilities? So 2 different facility protocols being different. That's the only thing I can think of. typically I know you wear the suit to protect from, any possible outside individual who wants to bring them to a quick judgment, and sentencing, so forth. So I'm not sure why in particular, because they're sitting, it's the same trial date, or not trial date, it's the same hearing date, same court. I would imagine they're coming from the same holding facility. So I'm not really sure why one the other. Not it could be as simple as they only had one available. The other guy's going to have to, you know, fend for himself. But I don't have a hard answer on that.
Yeah. Phil, a couple questions for you from like a detective / investigator standpoint. Oren is in the red. AC is letting us know, and AC has been all over this. Where'd she go? Right here. Number one, Phil, these guys can't be together, right? Because I assume if they are sitting together in the, getting food at the commissary or whatever, they could talk and come up with some sort of coordinated plan. So I assume they're keeping them separated. That's one question. The second question is what I was just talking about. It sounds like the dad has bailed these guys out a million times. Are they liable in any way, like from your perspective? In other words, do you have to go question the parents? Do you have to see what involvement they had and other people?
Well, sure. You want to get the background on these people. That's all part of what I call psychological autopsies. So this kind of behavior doesn't happen in a vacuum. It started back in high school, as we've been told, if that's in fact where it started. So you want to find out what's the genesis for this kind of thing. And that's going to take interviewing the family if they're willing to sit down for an interview. Now, they don't have to talk to law enforcement, but I would think there's uh, we don't know how they were raised in terms of respect for women and that kind of thing. We don't know if they were seeing examples of what they're doing now, what they've been caught doing now, if they saw them then. So there are a lot of things we don't know. But this kind of behavior develops over time, and the longer you get away with it, the more bold you get in committing it. So, you want to do a complete workup on these guys and how they grew up, where they grew up, who influenced what were the influences in the family internally. You're working this thing from the inside out. So. And in terms of them being housed together, I doubt very seriously if they're being housed together, if they're even in the same building together. So, much like some of our fan favorites, the Menendez brothers, those guys separated out.
Yeah. So just I'm going to put a bow on this in a moment, but Scott Duffy, the indictment reads like a page out of the Diddy indictment. They were violently drugging and essaying women. They were luring them through dating apps and social media. They were hosting group events where they invited other men to our women, the word I can't use on YouTube. They were serial essay predators, according to this. Again, the interesting thing to me, Scott Duffy, in all this is we know that these are POSs, but it says right here, by the way, these brothers would do this, at least in the Miami case. It was very clear that they would have their way with a woman beyond their choice, and then they would swap, and the brothers would watch each other do this. So this is just a whole other level of this. But Scott Duffy, they hosted group events where other men were invited to these women. So now this seems really tough from your position as an FBI investigator. How do you get these other guys? Someone told me yesterday, I think Rob D'Amico said it, you got to get these guys first and then kind of work your way backwards. Do you agree with that?
If you don't have any other way, sure. It's always good to start on the bottom and work your way up. In the drug world, you work with the drug users. You're not looking to put the drug users in and nobody else. You're looking to simply flip them and keep going up ultimately to get to the manufacturers, to the makers, to the, etc. Here the same way. If they are in fact the top of the spear, and they are directing everybody else, it would be nice, and the feds have the resources to be able to identify these individuals. And it will come through, if not through. So, for example, let's just say it's at a hotel, and then let law enforcement go in and pull all the receipts of those that had stayed, right, and kind of identify people that way, through all the digital media contact. If everybody is communicating, if I have an invite and I'm invited and I go and I give an RSVP, all that leaves a digital footprint, and my belief is law enforcement is uncovering those in order to identify these men, and they're going to have a choice. And it will be, I imagine this is being set up sort of like a RICO case. You can all do the exact same time, for the smallest involvement, to the top, to the leader. So these, I'm not going to say they're lower level if they're all participating in the act of what we've been discussing against these victims. Then they will pay the price, but they may have, hey, come forward now, plead guilty to this, and testify. So it will be interesting to see how others are identified and brought into this.
Yeah. Well, I wish these guys nothing but the worst. Phil Waters, a final question about this, and I heard that they're smiling today. These guys think that they can get away with everything, obviously. And living here now, having grown up in the blue-collar state of New Jersey, and now being in the material world of Miami, where Ferraris and Lamborghinis, no offense to Phil, reign supreme. These guys were probably incredibly entitled, and now they're going to be incredibly entitled to a long time in prison, possibly life. And this guy in the red has now ruined his wife's life and his soon-to-be baby. I mean, imagine coming into this world and your father is a predator who's now locked away. I agree with Julie Frew. Absolutely no victim shaming here at STS. It is not allowed. But Phil, one question that I got to wonder about: Diddy, these guys, they had access to private jets. These guys could be sitting in Israel or Thailand or Vietnam, like Donna Adelson wanted to get to. Why do they stick around? And now they're probably never going to get out.
Why do
why do the predators? Yeah, why do the bad guys still look? These guys are kind of smiling in court. These guys look like they're twisted, if I could say that. But yeah, why don't they hop on our private jets and take off, get out of Dodge?
Well, because I'm sure Daddy, who's put up his big property there as the bail for this thing, is telling them, you better not, because he's the one that will forfeit that collateral. So, and if it's, I would imagine that they're going to put these guys on ankle monitors. They're going to take their passports away. They're going to do all those things that the system can do to presumably prevent them from leaving the country. And in regards to these other actors that may be involved in this thing, other suspects, I will tell you that I would imagine that the agents and the detectives that are involved in this are approaching these lower level participants, and they're asking them a question: do you want to be a suspect or do you want to be a witness? And they may be. I've done the same thing in homicide investigations, murder investigations. There may be more to glean from people who participated in this as a witness to get the big fish than it is to try them. Or they may come to some sort of an agreement that you're going to get charged, but We're talking about the degree of the charge and the number of years you're going to spend in prison. So, and then the federal charge, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Scott, but when the feds come down and lower the boom on you, each charge you are charged with, each crime you are charged with, that sentencing guideline applies to each one of those charges. Am I right about that, Scott?
Correct.
And so, just for the sake of our discussion, you find a guy that's done 10 of these, he's been involved in 10 of these escapades. Well, he's getting charged in each one of those. So therefore, he's looking at, if it's a life sentence, he's looking at 10 life sentences. So I tell you what, and these guys, I don't know if this is the way they're looking here in court. I mean, who knows? These are a snapshot. We don't know what is going on prior to this picture being taken and what went on afterwards. So I'm not going to make any judgments about a picture of the guy smiling in his little red suit. We don't know what prompted that. So, but it does present an image of a person who thinks that perhaps that he may get out of this. He may not be held accountable for this thing. So these guys have been running loose for at least a decade, maybe longer, and now they're going to be called to task to be held accountable for what they've alleged to have done, and their future is not a bright one.
That is for sure. I lied. One more question, but Mo Roma here. Will the feds charge him in Florida or New York like Diddy? This is an interesting comment, which is probably there's truth to it. This is so awesome. The Florida courts have enabled perpetrators like this for 20 years. It's not a coincidence. This is happening in Miami. Human trafficking is a Florida business. I don't know. You know, that's a little bit conspiratorial, but maybe Florida needs to work on things. But Scott Duffy, and COE, if you know, let me know. From what it's unbelievable that they got bail. That's the comment that I was going to get to. Scott, I don't know if this is obviously pretty technical, but it looks like one is a $2 million bond. The other is a $3 million bond. I don't know which, because they look identical. And the other one has a hearing, I think, in federal court later today. But is there going to be a chance here, Scott, that and COE, let me know, if they actually walk out of, they're at what's known as the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center, which is the Miami-Dade County Jail. I mean, are they going to walk out of the jail, potentially go home and then be rearrested by the feds, or do the feds come to the jail and rearrest them? How does all this work?
Yeah, so from what I've read, and correct me if I'm wrong as we're all trying to figure this out, my thought was the New York district, so the New York jurisdiction, the feds in New York have lodged a detainer. And so thereby, whatever it is they're doing in Florida on the state charges, the judge knowing that, hey, they're not getting out because there's a detainer for them. So unless I'm wrong, my belief was the state is going to grant them bond, and then they'll post that bond on the state side, and then the detainer will serve as, but you're not allowed out the door. So then they'll be transported to a federal courthouse to answer to the charges in Florida with what's happening in New York. So Florida is just like it was a state charge, one state versus another. You have the right to fight an identity and a detention hearing and not leave Florida to go to New York. So my belief was New York will be lodged as a detainer, thereby nobody will be walking out into freedom unless I'm wrong about the New York charge.
Oh, Vesper's all over this. She says they're not walking out. The U.S. Marshals are turning them over to New York City. That's a COE. What do you have?
Scott is absolutely right. I just read up. They were granted house arrest, but they are in Miami custody until next week then they'll be sent over, exactly what Scott just said, to federal custody. And at that point, it's back to New York. And yesterday, New York denied them the bail.
So I don't get it. So are they going home till next week?
No, they're in
Okay.
custody in Florida.
Okay.
They will be granted bail on paper, but not in reality.
By the way,
And
this
it's
is
exactly what
COE
Scott
and
said.
AI. This is she and I every day. It could be like, so does the remote need AAA batteries? And she's like, no, I just told you the remote needs AA batteries. So we go through this every day. This just happens to be the subject matter. By the way, I got to throw this in here. Thank you so much, Reese's mom. The Kindle, you guys know I've written a book about my mom that will change your life, not my life. $1.99, $1.99 for the next 3 weeks, $1.99 for the next 3 weeks. Just trying to get the word out. I had a fight with my publisher. No more private jets. Moving on to other news, and we've got 15 minutes on the clock. If you guys have any funny, interesting, or otherwise questions for Scott and Phil, I'm going to be at the bottom of the chat, and I'll mix them in with stories of the week. First story, by the way, these guys can get right off of my screen is what I'm trying to do, but I can't do it. There you go. Oh, that's the wrong one. There you go. Scott Duffy, this is your neck of the woods. This is a matter of fact where you used to be a police officer. This happens, but I wanted to bring it up because it's I think I don't want to say rare, but it took me by surprise. This guy, it's a home invasion in Lower Merion, 2:20 a.m. Sunday, December 8th. Intruder gets in there. He's a 42-year-old guy from Philadelphia, from the city. He shoots and kills the son of the homeowner multiple times, a guy named Andrew Gaudio. And Andrew stepped in the way. He was trying to help his mother, Bernadette Gaudio. She also suffered several gunshot wounds, but she survived. She was taken to the Lankino Medical Center, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. I bring it up because there are obviously home invasions, but how common or rare is it where they go this bad, where the guy just opens fire? I mean, he had to expect that they were going to be home at 2:20 in the morning. And is this, to Phil's point, that if anyone comes in the bunker, they're not leaving that bunker? What's your public service announcement about this?
Yeah, so I have patrolled that area. I'm very aware of that area. It is just off of City Avenue, City Line, City Avenue. Route 1 is the dividing line, so to speak, between the city of Philadelphia and the township of Lower Merion. With that being said, when I saw this come out, my immediate reaction was, like I have handled many home invasion robberies, my home invasion robbery, since I was in the drug world, was typically, okay, you're going to commit a home invasion robbery on a rival drug dealer, on a drug user that you believe to be coming from substantial wealth. You get their background, where they're living, you follow them, what have you, and then a home invasion robbery takes place. That's in the drug world. And then, having worked also where this could have been, they are a business owner in the city and residing outside the city in what is considered main line of Philadelphia. And so thereby business owners are known to bring their cash home, hide them in vaults, etc., as opposed to the banking system. These are the typical home invasion robberies that take place, and as opposed to a burglary where you're sneaking in, you don't want to have any, you're hoping not to have any interaction with the homeowner, resident, etc. Get whatever you're looking and then get out. Home invasion robberies are typically at gunpoint, some other type of weapon. They're going in there to hog tie, get what they need, and then get out. Still not necessarily just shooting victims indiscriminately. So this is a little bit of a surprise to me. I don't know the background. I don't know if the background has been released. For example, did these individuals, it was at least two, target the wrong residence, and so thereby enter into a residence, come across whatever, met with resistance, and then just started shooting indiscriminately? Did they mistake the resident for something else? All possible. So I don't know the particulars, but a random home invasion robbery, almost like a burglary with a shooting, is a rarity.
Yeah, it is rare. Scott, I'm going to ask you a very personal question. You can tell me to buzz off, but when you go to bed at night and you've got kids and you've got your wife, is there a firearm accessible nearby in case someone is to walk up your stairs at 2:20 a.m.? Or would you have to go through like a lockbox procedure?
I'm not so sure I'm going to
Answer
disclose that on air.
that.
Would you agree with me, Phil? let
That,
somebody.
Someone needs to find out. If I had now, if I had,
that's need to know information, and Joel, you don't need to know.
I'll take that as don't break into. I wouldn't break into either of these guys' house. Now, if you break into my house, I'm coming at you with like a wiffle ball bat. That's all I got. Even though I'm in Florida, I need to learn how to shoot. This next story is a Houston story. I picked one from the Commonwealth where Scott is, and one from Houston. This story, by the way, is absolutely mind-boggling, sickening, horrible. So again, turn your ears off, because this to me is probably worse or on par with everything else that we've talked about. So this guy is a Houston attorney, Phil Waters. I'm looking for his name here. His name is Michael Howard from Sabine or Sabine County, Texas.
Sabine. Yeah.
Sabine, there you go. He calls police, and he says he accidentally shot his adult son. And then it gets weirder. He says that he took him to his property and he cremated him. He burned him because that's what he would have wanted. And the son, you come to find out, has Down syndrome, and is a special needs child. And he told police it was all one big accident. And he said, look, my son is high functioning, but he did have Down syndrome. This guy need to be permanently rehabilitated for doing this to his son.
Well, I would not make a statement based on just what you've said. I would need to see the backstory here. That's one of those. If it were my investigation, of course, I would enter objectively. I would want to interview the father. That's very strange what he's talking about and what he did. But those are the things that you get him in the interview room, and you try to get those questions answered and try to make sense of what they've done, at least from their perspective. And then that leads you evidence leading me where I need to be. Then, and it's always a journey for the truth. So you want to understand how that culminated into that particular event. I did have a case. I worked a case as a private investigator for a criminal defense attorney where same set of circumstances, in the sense that the father shot the son and killed him and then stabbed him with a knife. So there was a, I get the case.
Why do you have to stab him after you shoot him? What is that about?
Well, that was one of the questions, right? So he was charged with murder. And of course, I get it. I'm working for the defense attorney, and I go in and I investigate the whole thing. And I did recover some evidence that this didn't happen in Houston, by the way. It happened in a city outside of Houston. But I did go to the scene. I worked the scene, and we recovered some evidence that the police department, when they worked the scene, did not recover. And it kind of explained where people were when this thing happened. And the son had some, if I recall right, he had some drug addiction problems, and then had some mental health issues to go along with it. And this crescendo came with this confrontation at the father's home, and that was the results. And this case just now was adjudicated. It happened, I want to tell you, 5 years ago. And it just now, now the father was held responsible for what he held accountable for what he did. But these cases, there's always a degree of justice and mercy involved in these things. So if justice is what we deserve, mercy is what we need. And in this particular case, there was an amount of mercy that was shown, but an amount of justice that was also measured out. So, and I thought, having known the whole story, I was very comfortable, I guess is the only word I can think of how this ended up being adjudicated. And so, and that's why each one of these events are separate unto themselves, and that's the way they have to be looked at. You can't compare apples to oranges. So, getting back to the case you just talked about, I would have to know the big picture here. What happened? What's his explanation? Does the evidence give his explanation any credibility? So, and that's difficult to do sometimes. So I would have to. I'm going to defer on making a judgment on that. I would just state that the evidence will lead those detectives in the direction that they need to go. The truth will be revealed, and then it's up to prosecutors on how they're going to further prosecution of that case.
Scott Duffy, this HM is upset you didn't answer the last question. He would like you. He heard you were in Dubai. He wants you to answer this question. By the way, this is not on my list, but I saw, and I only caught the headline. Thank you, Jewel Jed. I saw this. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm turning everything. I got to turn digital stuff off this weekend and just let my brain breathe. And I highly recommend that to everyone in the community. But I caught a headline. I haven't read it. This is a fascinating case, and we've done it on this show. And this boggles my mind. 2000, I think it's 17. I have to double check. But Barry and Honey Sherman are the I think that one of the richest couples in all of Canada. They live in Toronto, multi-billionaires. He has the largest genetic pharmaceutical company in the country of Canada. And then they're found dead and in a very weird way. They're in their home. They're by the pool, indoor pool. They have belts around their necks, which are tied to railings, but their hands were all these weird things. Anyway, there's today, all these years later, the Toronto Star, this guy, Kevin Donovan, has been all over this. He reports that the police, Scott Duffy, never got alibis for any of the people, any of the family members or people that they interviewed. And it's just like mystifying. The headline was something like Detective 101 or something like that. How could a law enforcement agency the size of the Toronto Police Service not get alibis? Because I don't want to say this, but I have to be careful how I say this. A lot of people think the family is involved, yet they didn't get hard alibis on where they were. They just kind of took their word for it. Your reaction to that?
Yeah. So in other words, law enforcement took statements from all family members, or at least those they felt they need to interview, and requested an alibi, but never checked those alibis. Is that?
That's how I'm reading it. And I'll be honest, I just looked at it very quickly because it came out right before. This guy's been on the case, but that's what it sounds like. They never basically verified the alibis.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I don't. So, for example, what is the relationship of any of the people that they interviewed to law enforcement, to the political entities in Toronto, so be it, where maybe, yeah, they're suspects until they're not suspects, and the job of law enforcement is to to investigate to the end, and keep open mind. Where's the evidence taken them, and quickly get out of that small circle, and be able to, if possible, and then go hunt down a killer or killers. So yeah, it boggles my mind that a simple checking of alibis has not been done. And I think there are, throughout history we've seen these. You can throw out the John Benet Ramsey case. It seems like there are simple missteps for a variety of reasons. That that doesn't mean that the case could have been resolved and solved, but at least be able to bring that trust that law enforcement did everything imaginable they could have, and then are waiting for whatever it may be, future science, DNA, etc. As opposed to, I hate hearing, well, if law enforcement did this in the beginning, we would have had a different outcome. So it's a combination of things, and ultimately, if it comes down to human error on the side of law enforcement, it's a shame. It's sad, but I would hope something, or new eyes and fresh look at this can provide some redemption there.
Well, and Phil always says money is a big motive, and there was several billion dollars to go around. Guys, they want to know why you do not have your hats on. Rachel here. The Sherman case is horrific. It is a very high-profile case. A lot of people think it was a professional hit. A lot of people think it was possibly a family member. But again, I don't know, for a agency as big as Toronto, and they deal with crime there, unfortunately. For them to not, I guess, verify the alibis. I'm going to look closer at that story. Maybe we do it next week. Scott Duffy, I'm just coming right back to you on this because I asked you about the other case, which this is different but the same. A 22-year-old mother in California is now dead. How did she die? She was shot and killed by her toddler. Toddler picked up the weapon, kills her. What is your word of advice / wisdom to people with toddlers and guns?
Yeah, secure those weapons. It reminds me, going back some decades, when I was in California, on a conference, law enforcement conference, and I walked by an area where there was a lot of law enforcement, and the tragic, you never want to hear, a police officer off duty, just getting off duty to go retrieve, or to bring their toddler. I believe, I don't remember if it was a boy or girl, but in the back seat, and he put his duty belt in the back seat, in his private vehicle, and the toddler, unbeknownst to him, retrieved the weapon and shot him in the back. And it was a very sad, just tragic, right? Of it all, across all levels. And so ultimately, time and time again, we have seen throughout history where law enforcement has to secure their own weapons, for especially in households where they have children, and then of course everybody else that has weapons to secure those weapons, because toddlers are very curious, seeking individuals, have no clue what they are doing, and then of course the harm. So this is just unimaginable but preventable tragedy, and it just comes to recognizing, if you have a weapon, train, and secure, especially in a household of young children.
STS Nation, do you guys collectively think that this toddler is going to have any memory? I don't remember anything like before the age of 6 or 7, I don't think, but curious that it's going to be this kid, I don't know, just kind of set up for a lifetime of therapy before life ever got started. Next story, Phil Waters. We're going to run through these, as I probably already a little over time, but I got to be out at 2, which is 10 minutes away. And these guys always are so generous with their time. Phil, this is your world. There's a guy named Kedis Jakob Damtew, Damtew. He was shirtless on a flight. He gets violent. He starts threatening everyone. They got to pin him up against a door. He took off his shirt shortly before landing, and started pushing his bare chest into the flight attendant. Much larger picture. There is quite a bit of air rage these days. Phil Waters, I try to provide public service here, a public service. If you're on a flight and there's a wacko who's getting violent and crazy, what do you recommend the public does? Phil Waters.
I know what this public would do. I can't speak for anybody else, but I would certainly, if I could in any way, shape, or form get that situation under control, I would certainly do it. And I think that, I've seen some of these videos on the plane, and people tend to kind of let it run its course, and it's kind of left up. Now, I know it's the attendants are the ones that are responsible for that, and they've been trained and how to handle those situations, so forth and so on. However, if I saw something like that and I was in proximity of it and could get to it, I would certainly do what I could do to get it under control. But I this particular story, my only curiosity is when did the shirt come off? Was it before he got on the plane or after he got on the plane? If they let him on the plane without the shirt, then that's self-inflicted. That would have been in homicide. We would have called that a clue.
Yeah, it's the very end of the flight. Scott Duffy, one-word answer: would you have taken the matter into your own hands if you could have on that flight?
Oh, sure. I enjoyed those. And we, when I was on the job, we were mandated, as were the in-flight security, but we were told, don't get involved in every public nuisance, drunken, unless the staff couldn't handle it. So we were secondary, just because we automatically had our weapons on. So you didn't want to get into a fight that could go awry. But I would love to be.
I would love to take a flight with Phil and Scott and then pay someone to just go crazy and see what happens. Ned Smith, who's pushing for the calendar. Second question is, did he look good without a shirt? Of course, Ned. This one, it begs the question once I tell you the story, if it's happened to either of you two guys. Falls River Police, that's Massachusetts. There's a guy that they're chasing. He's trying to flee police, and he thinks it's a good idea. He's jumping from roof to roof, and he jumps into a chimney where he promptly, unlike Santa Claus, he gets stuck in the chimney. And now that the police have got to help him get out. Phil Waters, have you ever had to extract a human other than Santa Claus from a chimney? And would you help him if you were chasing him and he fell into said chimney and was stuck in there?
Well, no, not from a chimney. And we read many times where these people get in there and they die. And then they're only found a couple of days later because as they start to decompose, everybody's trying to figure out where the smell's coming from. However, the closest I've had to this was a young man that we were looking for. He had committed a murder, and we knew where he was, and we got a warrant for him, and we went to his house, and his mother was insisting that he was not present. And then we asked if we could come inside. We had the warrant, and I don't remember if she said yes or no, but we were coming in regardless because we had a good felony warrant. And in the process of looking through the house, he made himself, his presence known by falling through the ceiling right in front of our feet. So that was new and different, and it was something that we took lots of pictures of. So yeah, that's about the closest thing I can think of, my own personal experience to that.
Duffy, anything close? Have you ever had to extract someone from an orifice of sorts?
Oh man, that's
now that's a different question.
I guess maybe
that's like assisting in a birth.
That might be strong.
Not a chimney. I did have one fugitive who made it to the roof. of a house. We were able to get we were able to get there, and then was stuck. So, it's like, okay, now how do I get down? And so we had our local fire department come and assist, while we're yelling, hey, if you're going to give us a problem as we're getting up there, because there's nothing worse than telegraphing your every step as you go up the ladder. But no, that individual was very compliant. And so be it. And similar to Phil's, I did have an individual, a fugitive, who fell through a ceiling from hiding up in an attic. We were able to hold on to his feet while the others went up and ensured that he wasn't holding anything that could harm us. So, it was helpful for him coming through the ceiling.
By the way, can't imagine Scott yelling. Me neither. Soothing Scott. I just pulled up the Webster, or this is actually the Oxford definition of orifice. It is an opening as of a pipe or tube, or one in the body, such as a nostril, or they have another.
Well, I think everybody went right to the body connection rather than the tube.
Yeah. Look at this. The Alexander Brothers have a wiki page. Okay. Going to fly through the rest and we're going to say goodbye. This guy, I should not say this publicly. I'm amongst friends here. Sort of a hero in a weird way of mine. Michael Lee Murray, although what he did is horrible, but I kind of can respect it. He was asking to return his, I sent this to Phil, by the way. He was asking to return his Mazda, I believe it was, in Utah. Had mechanical problems. He just wanted to return. Look at this. Phil looking very nice today. I agree.
Oh, thank you, Elaine. Thank you.
Yeah, just don't tell the wife. Anyway, he was upset with mechanical problems on his Mazda. He wanted to return it. The car dealership said no. Got in his car and he drove his car through the dealership. Sometimes you get frustrated. It's something I definitely would have thought but not have done. But I can maybe sort of kind of see where he's coming from. Last two things very quickly. I brought this one out because Phil will comment on this at the very end. Elton John, who's got all kinds of ailments, including apparently having gone through, he's going blind right now, but he came out and said one of the greatest mistakes that America has ever made is the legalization of marijuana. He's been sober 34 years. He says it's a gateway drug, and it has really helped ruin the country, which I thought was fascinating. He was a serious drug addict at one time. Last but not least, this was also of great importance to me because we see them every day. You see birds every day. Birds, the things that fly in the air. You ever really look at a bird and wonder, like, it's flying above, like, the Empire State? And they're really miraculous creatures. But anyway, this bird is the oldest known wild bird in the world, 74 years old. How they keep track of the age, I do not know. But this beautiful female bird had a baby, laid an egg at 74 years old. They are not supposed to be able to do this at that age. Jonathan Plissner, who supervises the biology division at Midway Atoll National Wildlife Refuge, said in a statement, "We are optimistic that the egg will, in fact, hatch." So we talked a lot about horrible crimes and death, but we end with the birth of life. Final thoughts, Scott Duffy, and then we'll round it out with America's most respected detective, the patriarch of the show, Scott Duffy. It's remarkable. A 74-year-old bird giving birth to a baby. You have to think there's a higher power at play to allow such a beautiful act of nature play out. Your thoughts on this and as we head into the weekend. And COE, you got to get on that call, COE, and I'll meet you there in a minute.
Beautiful story, miracle of life. So hopefully everything. What's the bird called? What kind of bird?
I just put it away. I'm going to look. Well, tell us your.
Sound. Either way.
Yeah.
I'll Monday is my mom's birthday, so happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday, Mrs. Duffy. I already asked you a question you got mad at, so I'm not going to ask how old she's going to be. But
she's up there, but she's.
And what are you going to do for the birthday? I'm curious.
Flowers, a phone call, and you know,
Is she
well
close
wishes.
enough to go visit?
She's in Connecticut.
Oh, not really. Okay. Okay. It's a long-winged seabird named Wisdom. It's a
Oh, nice.
Laysan albatross, Laysan albatross.
It's a nice name. Nice.
Mm.
And with that being said, also as sad as it is, it's also celebration of life. On Monday, be heading to a funeral of one of my FTOs, field training officers, who in the detective unit. When I went up to the detective unit for a little bit in Lower Marion Township, well-respected detective Lyman Hatton. Good job on Earth.
Wow. That's beautiful and sad at the same time. By the way, Ned Smith points out a true fact. A bird can drop poop on anybody that they choose. Carm, I think other people say this, but at least from her European descent, she says it is great, not just good, but great luck if a bird drops its excrement on your head, shoulder, anywhere on your person from the sky. She says it is good luck. So don't look at it as a bad thing. Look at it as a positive thing. This is why Karmela is a true survivor. Look at this, Black Phil. Look at this. Phil looks better every week. Tell the wife, I'm sure she's behind his health and longevity. What happened to the heart out? I'm late. COE, you got to get on that call. I'm gonna meet you there in a second. Phil Waters. I got an angry, hateful text, not hateful, but Phil said, because we were doing this big story about Luigi Mangione, Phil said, how come Duffy's on and I'm not? This was not on a Friday. I immediately had heart palpitations and said, oh, shh. And I explained to Phil that he is, in my eyes, a American hero, a legend, America's most respected detective. He already bugs me that I take enough time out of his day on a Friday. So I said I would never want to overstep my bounds. Of course, I would have asked you had I known. So now I'll ask him more often, but that was the reason. And then Phil did come on and gave us expert analysis. Phil, your final thoughts on this beautiful Friday.
Well, that's not exactly how that conversation went, but nonetheless, I digress. Yeah, so happy birthday to your mom, Scott, right? And
Yes.
we'll keep you in our prayers at your celebration of life with your FTO. Those guys are important in our lives in law enforcement. Those guys at whatever function they were in. I remember my patrol guys. I remember my detectives, the people that mentored me there, and yeah, they're important people that passed on the knowledge they had to us, and then we end up finding ourselves where they were. Right, we end up being them. Now next week, my wife and I, on the 18th, we will be celebrating our 42nd wedding anniversary.
Wow, congrats. That's wild.
So
40,
that
wait,
statement that was just
4-2 or 4-7?
4-2, 42nd.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice.
So that statement that I think was that widower. She's exactly right. So we do celebrate really good health. We've been very blessed in that area, and I can't imagine spending my life with another woman.
Look at this.
So they don't call her Saint Sandra for nothing. So let me qualify that. But yeah, we'll be celebrating it, and we're blessed with 3 beautiful children and 9 beautiful grandchildren. So it's been a great life that we've been blessed with, and so we appreciate them. I appreciate them. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate STS Nation and the relationships that we've established here, where we can get together on Fridays and chat like we're family. So even the haters, who I still love and I still pray for.
And speaking of haters, the COE pulled this up because she's a sadist herself. Thank you, Andrew. For a professional talkie, sure. Can't. I probably do say the word but Andrew, late on a Friday after a long week, what I'd like to say to you rhymes with something that I don't want to say, but I'll just say thank you for being here, Andrew. I appreciate it. I'll work on the and if I had a baseball bat, I might swing it at your head right now, but I still love you, man. Come back, enjoy the show. I'll make sure to say a few extra for you. Love everybody. It's been a crazy week. Ned Smith says it best. Suck it, Andrew, but I still love you. And look at this. Bye, Andrew. Love you, America. Love you, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the great city of Houston, the great state of Texas. Happy birthday to Mrs. Duffy. Happy anniversary to the Waters, and many more to come for everybody. And everybody have a great weekend. Bye.